Alright, I'm going to show you how to repair a surfboard ding. I don't know if you would even call it a ding. It's just like pretty much a chunk is missing out of my nose. This happened, I think, when I ran into Brad. I don't really know. I think we were dropping in and we both fell, and then this ran into his board and kind of just chunked out because his board is really old. Alright, now what I'm going to do is sand basically the area around the repair and just rough it up so the resin and the Q-cell will stick to it. And I'm using really heavy grit sandpaper. This is actually for a belt sander, which is kind of weird, but it'll work. Alright, so now this is how it looks after I've done the sanding and the peeling off of any fiberglass that isn't sticking. So yeah, there's a little bit more foam showing, but that's what you want. Okay, one thing that's worth mentioning before I start with the resin, if you have an epoxy board, then you shouldn't be using this resin or any resin made for a polyurethane board. The reason is, if you do that, then you're gonna melt the foam. So make sure you know what your board is made out of and what resin you should be using. This is actually sanding resin. Not a lot of people would probably use it for like a real repair, but I've been using this for a while and it works really well. It's also sun cure, so there's no mixing of hardener, which is really nice. You just take your board out into the sun and it hardens. So I'm going to mix up some, I call it Q-cell. It's not actually Q-cell, but I just got styrofoam bits that I got from a surf shop. They're nice enough to just give me some shavings left over from them making surfboards. Alright, now I'm taping the bottom of the board so that way I can make a little shelf to hold the resin, and it'll stick on there without it just dripping down the edge of the board. And it doesn't really matter to me if the tape gets stuck in there because I can sand it out if I have to. Okay, this is just my version of Q-cell. Q-cell is like basically, from my understanding, it's the same thing. It's like a foam, like resin, like kind of something to replace the foam if you can't physically fill it in with a real foam. So yeah, this is just something that I'm gonna make here. I'm gonna pour some resin in and then mix it up. You want it to be like pretty thick. Like you don't want too much resin, but you also want enough so that it's actually like gonna stick. You kind of will understand like what it needs to be like. This looks pretty good. And then just start trying to like stick it to the edge to recreate the foam that is lost. And if I go too far, it doesn't really matter because this stuff's really easy to sand out because of the foam particles in it. So if you were to do this with just resin without the foam particles, it's probably more likely to crack than it would with how I'm doing it here. Just try to get it as smooth as you can, because the smoother you can get it, the less sanding you'll have to do. Alright, so I've got the basic outline with foam and resin here of the board, and now I've got to go put it out in the sun and let it bake and harden. So I'm going to go do that. Alright, so now I've got the resin all hardened and dry, and I've taken the tape off. So you can see what it looks like. There's a pretty nice flat edge on the bottom. I'm going to sand this all and try to get it as close to the original shape of the board as possible. And then if I have to, I'll add more resin to get it even more smooth. So I'm gonna go do that now. Alright, so I've got the board all filled in. It's starting to look more like a regular surfboard nose now. Now what I'm gonna do is get the cloth and put some resin on it. This is just cloth that you can find at Home Depot. It's not anything special. It's not like real surfboard cloth. It does the job though, it's easy to find. Alright, so I got this cut. Nothing really too scientific. I think I'm just going to try to cover the whole top triangle of the nose and then just get the resin on it. So I've got this basically how I want. You can still move it around a little bit when you get the resin on there, but I got my resin in the cup and I'm just going to start painting it on. And I'm not wearing a shirt because if you get this resin on your clothes, it pretty much will ruin your clothes. And I've done that to some swimsuits and some t-shirts, and I'm not gonna do it again, so that's why. So I'm not too worried about making this look absolutely perfect right now, because if it's not amazing, I can always sand it a little bit later and then add resin to make it smooth. But just keep painting it on. Get a little bit of the edge on the rail here. Alright, right now I'm going to do a little bit of a V cut here. That way when I fold these sides down, it kind of goes down a little bit nicer. Alright, so now I've gone over the whole repair with the rough grit sandpaper again, just to get any of the little like loose strands out or whatever else is not smooth. And you can kind of see that the cloth doesn't really seem like it has the resin in it because I sanded over it. So now I'm just going to go over it again with more resin and just paint it on and make it look nice again. I'm going to have to sand this one more time with some finer grit sandpaper, just smoothing it out, and I might need to put more resin over it once I'm done with that. It kind of depends how smooth you want it to be in the end. Basically, like, you can just keep adding resin and sanding, and just the more you do that, the smoother it'll get. Alright, so I've sanded it with the finer grit sandpaper, and it's definitely getting way smoother and it's starting to look nicer. It's still not perfect, so I'm going to keep going over it with this coat of resin. It might need another coat, we'll see. So I've got this very well sanded, and the last step that I'm going to do is take some resin and put it on this paper towel and just kind of smear it around. And the idea is to paint it on without getting any brush strokes on it. So this will just be the final step. Okay, so I'm all done sanding and putting the coats of resin on. It's not the prettiest repair that you've ever seen, but it definitely will do the job, and it's not too bad. So there we go.